Shall we turn to the Bible? We're going to turn to a book in the Old Testament, Second Chronicles. Second Chronicles. I don't know why I said Chronicles. Second Chronicles 20. And in the church Bibles, if you want to hand those out, if you're sitting next to them, you want to grab a church Bible, that's at page 451. We're going to turn to 2 Chronicles, chapter 20. And we're going to read from verse 1 through to verse 12. Amazing. Is everyone there? Everyone there that wants to be? You got it on your phone and so on. So we got some good names in this story here. Jehoshaphat. After this, the Moabites and the Ammonites with some of the Meunites came to wage war against Jehoshaphat. Some people came and told Jehoshaphat, "A vast army is coming against you from Edom, from the other side of the Dead Sea. It is already in the Hazazon Tamar, that is En-gedi." Alarmed, Jehoshaphat resolved to inquire of the Lord, and he proclaimed a fast for all of Judah. The people of Judah came together to seek help from the Lord. Indeed, they came from every town in Judah to seek him. Then Jehoshaphat stood up in the assembly of Judah and Jerusalem at the temple of the Lord in front of the new courtyard and said, "Lord, the God of our ancestors, are you not the God who is in heaven? You rule over all the kingdoms of the nations. Power and might are in your hand, and no one can withstand you. Our God, did you not drive out the inhabitants of this land before your people Israel and give it forever to the descendants of Abraham, your friend? They have lived in it and have built it in it a sanctuary for your name, saying, if calamity comes upon us, whether the sword of judgment or plague or famine, we will stand in your presence before this temple that bears your name and will cry out to you in our distress, and you will hear us and save us. But now, here are men from Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, whose territory you would not allow Israel to invade when they came from Egypt. So they turned away from them and did not destroy them. See how they are repaying us by coming to drive us out of the possession you gave us as an inheritance. Our God, will you not judge them? For we have no power to face this vast army that is attacking us. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Today, I want to talk about how we as a church are going to start the new year in prayer. It's taken me 3.5 years to notice this. But every December, we sort of, as a church, we go into the big event mode. We host these huge events, these spectaculars, these family events, these carol services, and we don't have regular Sundays. And we welcome hundreds of people through our doors, and we're buzzing with energy, creativity. We're in mission mode. And then Christmas Day, and I finally sort of stop and exhale and take a breather. And then the new year rolls in, and sometimes as a church we've skipped that first Sunday in January if it's a bit too close to New Year's Day. And before I know it, I've realized that I've missed the moment that I might shape or communicate how we start the year together as a church community. And so then by the time January is already going, it feels a bit too late to say, here's how we're starting the year. And so if you don't mind today, November 16th, this is my How to Start 2026 Well talk. Is that okay? And here's how. Well, actually, if you're a true church Anglican traditionalist, the new year starts at Advent. So Phil's given me a nod. There we go. And here's how. January at Bay Church is going to be a month of prayer. Throughout the month, we're going to have lots of different opportunities and moments to come together and to pray. And we're going to start that on Sunday the 4th with a worship and prayer night in the evening. We've got a regular service in the morning, but we're going to be praying and worshiping to kick off our month of prayer in January. And the theme for the month is All Eyes on Jesus. All eyes on Jesus. 2026 is actually going to be a year full of opportunity for us as a church. But of course, it's also full of unknowns. There's going to be things that we're going to need to discern as a church. There's going to be decisions that we're going to have to make as a church, and directions for us that we need to listen out for. There are planting opportunities being discussed. There are the way that we shape and structure the church being discussed. And there will be exciting doors that we want to push open. But there's also going to be potential disruptions and distractions that might slow us down or hold us back. And that's why we're going to choose to begin the year the same way King Jehoshaphat did in our reading, where he said, "We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." We want as a church to align our prayers with that prayer, because before we build anything, we bow. Before we plan, we want to pray. And I want to show you 4 reasons this morning why I think this matters. 4 movements that happen when we fix our eyes on Jesus. The difference that it makes to our year, not just as a church, but individually. Where we might go from reaction to resolution, from confusion to confidence, from striving to surrender, and then that our worship would become a witness. So let's walk through those 4 things together. Firstly, from reaction to resolution. We want to set the tone for 2026 with a resolution to always pray first and not react first. Reaction is an easy thing to do. We often react to things. And whether you have a healthy way of reacting or not, when the kids are playing up, when things are happening at work, when situations are going on and you react in a certain way. Psychology is helpful here. It tells us that when we react out of fear or stress to the things going on, our brain triggers what's known as the amygdala hijack. The emotional part of our brain, it sort of like grabs the wheel before the thinking part has even woken up. This is why we might jump to conclusions. We narrow in on the threat or the uncertainty. We make fast, short-term decisions, and our perspective shrinks. Emergency responders, they call this perceptual narrowing. When you react, you see less of a situation. When you immediately just react to something that's going on, you see less of the situation, not more. Reacting actually narrows our vision. We don't see the whole situation. But Jehoshaphat showed us a different and better way. It said, when he heard the report, alarmed, he resolved to inquire of the Lord. And he told all of Judah to fast and pray. Before his emotions could drive the situation, he chose prayer. Before his emotions could steer the moment, he turned to God. When life hits hard, the first instinct of faith is prayer, not panic, not reacting. And honestly, I catch myself all the time reacting instead of praying. When it's tricky in the morning and the school run, and I'm just reacting to the things going on around me, or when things are happening, or I've heard of conversations going on, and I'll react in a way that doesn't help me see the situation as best as I should, rather than praying. But prayer opens the space for God to speak, for God to steady us, to widen our perspective. And that's the kind of perspective we want as a church. Prayer is not our last resort, but it's our first response. And resolution, resolving to pray first, brings clarity where reaction brings chaos. And it's from this place of clarity that we can better seek the will of God. That's how we want to start the new year. But what does this look like tomorrow for you? Monday morning? Well, before reacting to that email or that comment or that pressure, the school run chaos, the work stress, the situations you have going on. It's about pausing, taking a breath, and praying, seeking God. Even a 10-second, Lord, give me clarity. That sort of prayer can shift everything. Resolution begins the moment that we choose to seek God before we respond. And so that's what we want to do. We want to move from reaction to resolution, a resolution to pray first as a church in the new year. And then we want to move from confusion to confidence. Prayer lifts our eyes from what we don't know to who we do know. Prayer lifts our eyes from what we don't know to who we do know. And it's important to remember who we are talking to. I used to work in Argos when I was between 18 and 22. I worked in the stockroom in Argos. And I don't know if you've ever shopped at Argos. And I don't know what your experience was there, but it's chaos out in the back in the stockroom. Particularly, and this would happen more often than we'd like, when a customer has bought an item and we can't find it in the stockroom and we're panicking. And I remember this happened once, and me and my friend, we were looking for this item, and this other guy called Jim, he was an auditor from head office, and he was there as well auditing. And he decided to help us as well. It took us a really long time. It was quite a high-value item. And we eventually found one that had been reserved for someone else. And we said, we've got to give it to the customer that's live now. These are the things. I'm letting you in on the secret behind the curtain at Argos. And we did that. And then Jim said, oh, but what does that now mean for this? And what does that mean for how it got delivered? And my friend just went, hey, well, we'll probably just say that it was lost on delivery and all this happened. And he said to him, I'm the auditor. And my friend was like, oh, yes, so sorry. You need to know who you're talking to. Not knowing who you're talking to can sometimes get you into trouble. But knowing who you're talking to, knowing who you're praying to can give you confidence for your life. Jehoshaphat begins his prayer with these words, are you not the God who rules over all? And then his prayer is a reminder of all that God had done for Israel, for the people of Judah. He's not reminding God who he is. God knows who he is, but Jehoshaphat is reminding himself. He's reminding the whole nation. He's stirring their faith. When we remember who God is, our confidence rises even in the middle of confusion, because prayer lifts our eyes from what we don't know to who we do know. We don't want to walk through life confused about our purpose, about our calling, about our standing with God, but we want to walk through life confident in who is leading us. When I first stepped into this role of leading Bay Church, I was full of excitement. There was so much prayer going on, so much praying for vision, praying for guidance. And there was a real confidence when we set up Bay Church about what we were stepping into as a church. We knew what we were about. But as the church grew, and things naturally become more complicated as you're trying to then fit the structures. And we were growing faster than our structures were enabling us or would have been good for. But just as the church grew, and let's be honest, people are complicated too. We're all complicated, and moments became confusing. And there were moments of doubts that were creeping in, moments where I find myself, Lord, how do I do this? How do I lead well? What do we need to do? I don't know what to do. And every time those sorts of questions and those things rose, God kept bringing me back to that same reminder. I don't need you to know how you can do it. I need you to remember who I am. He wanted me to remember what he's done in my life so far. Remember how faithful he has been. Remember what he's already done in and through this church. And it was those reminders, it was that, and it wasn't having all the answers, but it was remembering who God is that restored my confidence in the middle of confusion. Prayer is sort of like when you zoom out on a map and suddenly you can see more. You can see the bigger picture, the terrain, the way forward makes sense again. And as a church, as we pray in the new year, I want us to remember the God who has already done so much in this church. To remember that he has brought so many people back to church and rekindled their faith. People who were written off church and had left and have come back and rediscovered their faith. He wants us to remember the people who have come to faith and come to know Jesus for the first time through Alpha or through Sundays. And he wants us to remember that the children who have decided to follow Jesus and have brought their families along to church, who have then begun to find faith for themselves as well. That's the God who has been a part of this story. That's the same God that wants to now lead us forward into the new year. To see even more than that, to see even more than we have already seen. And then Monday morning, when you step into a week where you don't have all the answers, where decisions feel heavy or the future feels foggy or confusing, remember who you're walking with. Remember who leads you. And let prayer be the moment where your confidence isn't in your plan, but is in God. Confidence comes when you say, Lord, I don't know the way, but I know the one who leads me. That's why we're praying in the new year. Reaction to resolution, confusion to confidence, and then striving to surrender. Every one of us knows what it's like to strive, to try to hold everything together in our own strength. But prayer teaches us something vitally important, and that is the joy of surrender. Fiona and I lived in London for a couple of years in a flat beside a park in East London. And one evening we were settling down again to another period drama. And suddenly this music started blasting from the park. And it was so loud that our windows were shaking. And we couldn't hear the TV and we couldn't hear each other either. And so we couldn't see over the wall to see what was going on in the park. And so we rang the non-emergency number, trying to be helpful. But the response that we got was basically, we're sure it's not that bad. Where would they power these speakers if they were there? So like, okay, the police don't know what's going on. They don't know. They're not going to help. So Fiona looked at me and said, could you go and check? You know, big, burly, intimidating me. Go out. So I took on my heroic assignment. I walked down the side of the house, I opened the gate, and directly in front of me were 12 police riot vans. There was a rave going on, a whole operation already underway. So I walked back inside the house. I said, Fee, I think the police have it covered. That's striving, trying to fix something that God is already fully aware of. Trying to be the hero of our own story, trying to save the day ourselves, and often burning ourselves out and tiring ourselves out in the process. But Jehoshaphat prays this, we have no power, but our eyes are on you. And then later in verse 15, God answers through a prophet who says, the battle is not yours, but it's God's. The battle's not yours. It's God's. Striving in life will always drain you, but surrender fills you and repositions you better. And you can see what happens later if you read on in the passage when Judah arrives. When the armies of Judah arrive at the battlefield, the enemies that were coming against them had already been there and had already then defeated and killed each other. So when Jehoshaphat and his army arrive there, they don't need to fight. God had already gone ahead of them. And that's what I want to pray for our life as a church. And that's what I want to pray over your life as well, as we head into the next season, that as you walk into situations, whether they be situations that you're struggling with at work, whether there's relationship issues and situations going on in your family or in your marriage or with friends and so on, whether there are actual opportunities that you're exploring or things that you're trying to discern and things that you're trying to work out, the prayer would be that as you walk into those situations, you would see that God has already been at work, clearing the way, making a way, fighting and winning the battles. I remember having conversations with people, like when you have to have a difficult conversation with someone. And I remember just praying beforehand, Lord, would you make a way here? Because this could be potentially really difficult. This could be quite damaging. And I'd pray and then I'd enter into that conversation. And before even having to say anything, someone would then say, hey, look, I've been thinking this. And it's the thing I was hoping would be the outcome of the meeting. Because God had gone ahead and made a way. And that's only possible through prayer. God making a way, fighting the battles and winning the battles for us. That comes when we surrender to him. This is not only something God will do for us, but it's something he has already done for us. The greatest battle humanity had to face was the battle against sin and death. But then Jesus on the cross won that victory, won that battle, so that you and I wouldn't have to fight a battle that we were never going to win in the first place. And the result of that victory won for us is freedom and forgiveness and fullness and a constant invitation to then surrender and trust in him and trust in his strength for everything else in your life. If he has fought that battle for us, then we can hand him all the others. I hope there won't be many battles for you next year or for us as a church next year. I honestly pray against those battles, but should those battles and those difficulties come, would you surrender to him rather than seeking to strive and work it out yourself? When you feel the pressure to hold everything together at work, at home, in the relationships that we have, that's our moment to surrender. And it's not about giving up, but it's about giving over. Surrender isn't weakness. It's what invites God's strength into the day, the week, or the year ahead. We want to go from striving to surrender, from reaction to resolution, from confusion to confidence, from striving to surrender. And then lastly, you'll forgive me, we've gone sort of like a negative to a positive, but we're going to go from a positive to an even greater positive, where our worship moves to witness. When Jehoshaphat and the people prayed, something beautiful happens. The people bow down, they fast, they pray. And then Jehoshaphat sends out the singers and the worship leaders ahead of the army. They're who lead the army, worship and prayer. Worship is not our response to victory. It's the pathway to it. Their worship led the army. Their praise went first. Their song carried the nation forward. And here's the power of it, because worship doesn't stay inside the building. We've been worshiping today, but our worship, it spills out. It echoes beyond us. It becomes a witness to the world around us. Think of the analogy of a bonfire. One spark can't really warm much. But when the whole bonfire lights up, when everyone together lights up, it draws people in from the cold. It's like a worshiping and a praying church becomes a blazing center of warmth and welcome in its community. And we can't be that without prayer, without worship. We're seeing it already. I've had conversations with people in the last few weeks who have just started coming on and say, I don't know what it is. I don't even think I'm religious. I don't know if I believe God yet, but I am just drawn to this place. And I don't know what it is. Well, it's the Spirit of God. It's a people who are praying and worshiping, seeking God. St. Paul and Silas in Acts 16, they were in prison and they began singing whilst they were in prison. Not after the miracle, not after the victory, but before it. And their worship, the ground began to shake and their chains fell off. But not just their chains fell off, but everyone else's chains in the prison fell off too, because worship impacts more than just the worshiper. Our worship has an impact, and that's what I hope for our church, that as we dedicate January to prayer and to starting off with worship, that our unity as a church would become our testimony. Our worship would become a witness to the world. Our praise becomes a signpost to Jesus. That our focus on Jesus would be the blessing that we seek to be for the Bay. Because the sound of a praying and worshiping church is the sound of hope for the community. This is how we first and foremost bless the Bay, through our prayers and through our worship. So would we go from worship to witness? All eyes on Jesus, now and particularly in January as a church. And here's the invitation. We don't need to wait till the new year. We can resolve to seek God in prayer today by choosing prayer first, letting that be our first port of call. We can lift our confidence in life by remembering who God is and remembering who walks alongside us and who leads us through life. We surrender our striving by letting him lead, by letting him fight the battles for us. And we move from worship to then witness as we carry his glory outwards to the world. We've got so many opportunities to pray. January is the month to go for it, but we're going to even start in Advent. We're creating these daily devotionals for families throughout Advent. A simple guided recording with a moment to pause through the day, to pray and to draw near to Jesus. And we can do that as families. Children from Bay Kids are going to be involved in the recordings of it. It's going to be really sweet. And each family, if you want to be involved in it, you'll get a free Advent candle that you can light as you do each day together. A beautiful way to join in together by praying together as families, as a church, as we head into January. But my prayer for us is simple. That January wouldn't just be a month of prayer, but it would be the beginning of a praying year and a praying church. That as we fix our eyes on Jesus, we would find the strength and the clarity and the courage we need for everything that's ahead. We don't know every road that God is going to lead us down in 2026, but we at least know the one who is going to lead us. So let's lift our eyes, let's steady our hearts, let's start the year with him at the center. This is how renewal begins. This is how faith grows. This is how Jesus actually transforms a community. J. Edwin Orr said that history is silent about revivals that did not begin with prayer. So shall we pray? Amen.